Passion Java defends TB Joshua, and he is big mad at the BBC documentary.
Let's say it's true. He is a human being, all right? We all human beings. The church is God using human beings. It's not God using God. No, we are human beings. We can make mistakes. We can have errors. We may do things because of flesh.
Let's talk about it here on All Things Theology. Cue my theme music.
All things theology, all things theology. We chop it up properly without an apology. Gotta give doxology to God, hallowed be, cause this is how we do it at All Things Theology.
Yo, grace and peace. Welcome back to an episode of All Things Theology, where this is your host K-Dub. Today, we're going to be responding to Passion Java's defense of TB Joshua. Before we get into that, little background, just in case you've been under a rock, BBC released a documentary over TB Joshua. Some of the allegations being made of him, they are quite large and extensive. Many sexual allegations with literally hundreds of women. Claims of abuse that is physical. I mean, the list goes on when it comes to the claims that are made against TB Joshua. I do find many of them convincing. Some may be a little stretched, but I think most of this documentary presents a valid case against TB Joshua. One of the things I want to do this pretty soon, is I want to do a live. I want to look at some of the things claimed against him and see whether it's valid or not. So if you'd like to see that, let me know. We'll do a live pretty soon about that. But Passion Java, like many of TB Joshua disciples, have come to his defense, claiming that, hey, he's still a great man of God. I've learned so much from him. All these people are just lying. I mean, man, this documentary had over 30 people in it. It was over 2 years of research. I mean, it's quite extensive, the links, and I think the claims, I mean, they speak for itself, right? Why would over 30 people want to lie about one man? They didn't want any money from. I mean, there's so many things I think that find these witnesses convincing. But again, if you want a live, we'll go through some of that and we will check it out. But let's hear what Passion Java, what is his most convincing argument for why TB Joshua didn't do it and why we should defend him. Let's hear what he has to say.
This is the great prophet Passion Java.
I mean, who introduced themselves like that? This is the great Passion Java, prophet Passion Java. Like, who introduced themselves as like being great? And I find that humility is not a virtue of Passion Java. I mean, I wouldn't dare introduce myself as the great K-Dub, the greatest YouTube content creator known to man, right? It's just a weird, it's just scratching your own ego. Like, hey man, if you're good, let other people praise you. I mean, that's a biblical concept, but I thought even the intro of this video was strange, right? He's in front of his, I'm not a car guy, but what is that, a Mercedes Benz? Like, he's just, look, doesn't it scream like this is all about me? Yeah, I'm going to talk about TB Joshua, but look at me. I mean, if you don't want people to think, one of the things I thought was interesting was like TB Joshua is acclaimed of being a lover of money, and here is a TB Joshua disciple. From an optic standpoint, this screams, yes, I like the money, I love the money, right? You should have did this in a basement with some holes in your t-shirt, right? That would have been a better optic standpoint, right? And so I thought the scenery of this was interesting. Not to make too much about the scenery, but because the statements are way more problematic. But let's hear what else he has to say. The great prophet Passion Java.
As I'm heading out of my house, I just thought it's best time for me to talk about the BBC documentary about the great prophet, the senior prophet, TB Joshua.
And so, yeah, he's the great prophet, and he's got to talk about the great prophet, TB Joshua, right? So everybody he affirms, I guess, it's just great, right? That's great.
I've never spoke about TB Joshua before, but I come to you to talk about him today because BBC is not addressing TB Joshua, mainly because
No, they literally are addressing TB Joshua. The documentary they have 3-part documentary, each video 50 minutes long. So nearly 3 hours, 2.5 hours plus of content where they're literally addressing TB Joshua. So I don't know what he's like. They're not really addressing TB Joshua. Now you're going to see what he's going to say after this is going to be lunacy, right? But did he watch the same documentary? I'd be curious. Hey, did you watch the 3-part documentary? Right? Because I have, many other have. Right? He's like, it's not about TB Joshua. It's like the Super Bowl is not about football. No. It's about it's actually about I don't know, like how do you watch the Super Bowl? How do you watch the TB Joshua documentary and not come to the conclusion it's actually about him? Now what we're about to see is actually tinfoil hat conspiracy nonsense we're about to hear for the next couple minutes, and then he's going to get back to this issue. But let's hear what else he has to say.
What are they going to benefit by attacking a dead man? What are they going to achieve by attacking someone who is dead? This is what I prophesied some time ago.
Of course, prophecy.
Satanists are plotting to launch 666, but they cannot launch 666 unless they destroy the church. So when they come and they start publishing stuff about TD Jakes, about TB Joshua, just last day I was in the
Well, I don't know what TD Jakes. So he seems to think, well, if the world is making accusations against men of God, right, and I deny that both of them are men of God, he seems to think, well, if the world is attacking Christians, or really airing out their hypocrisy and how they live behind closed doors, then that's satanic. He's going to essentially say that in this video. Kind of dismisses if the allegations are true or not, right? I mean, but he's actually going to kind of go in that premise. So we'll wait. More tinfoil hat stuff coming up right here.
Documentary of Song, and this church was affecting and attacking most powerful ministries around the world. It's not because they want to attack the prophet person or TB Joshua or TD Jakes. Prophet Angel was in Al Jazeera just last year. Why are they attacking these great men of God?
Yeah, let's see.
It's simply because the devil wants the church people to look at men of God as nobodies.
So the reason why BBC made the documentary, he seems to know the inside motive, is because they want to attack TB Joshua to make the whole church look like nobodies. If that's the case, why don't they just do a documentary about every Christian leader? Now, don't get me wrong. I am not the biggest fan of the BBC, but I listened to this documentary, weeding out the good and accepting the bad, right? Now, yeah, BBC's, most times they're liberal, but what they present in this film, I mean, if half the stuff, if 1/4 of the stuff is true, it is actually very damning against TB Joshua and his legacy. But he's like, well, they released these documentaries attacking these Christian pastors, these wolves and charlatans, because they want to make us all look like nobodies. Well, let me first burst your bubble. We are nobodies, so that shouldn't hurt you. We're nobody special. So I don't see how. Again, the reasoning in Passion Java's logic is actually quite faulty. I know he's standing behind his nice vehicle. He got his nice little sweater. It's probably a brisk 50 degrees where he's at. But all of this is just gaslighting. It's filibustering. It actually isn't addressing the issue at hand. So let's hear more what he has to say.
Most evil people. So that when you decline a man of God and they release, it's just going to be one chip which they'll put on your forehead or your hand. They'll say
I don't know what a chip in my forehead or my hand has to do with anything. Now look, I am not dispensational, not that every dispensationalist agrees with that, but I don't believe that a chip is the mark of the beast. I've done a video about that, but nevertheless, what is the correlation and connection with the chip in your forehead or hand have to do with TB Joshua? Like I said, a lot of this is just tinfoil hat reasoning, right? You're like, if you actually listen to this, you're like, what is he talking about? You know, you would be asking a question similar to this.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Boy, ain't no way, boy. Boy, ain't no way, boy.
You know, I'm just listening to this. I'm just like, what does actually this have to do with TB Joshua? Like, where are you going? Where did you come from? Where did you go? Where'd you come from, Cat and I Joe? You know, I have no clue what's going on, but we're gonna eventually get somewhere.
Is you're doing Apple Pay, your passport to travel, you need this chip to pay, you need this to do business, you need this, and the church is the only opposition to 666. That's
Okay.
why they are doing this. My point and my view on TB Joshua issue is, let's say it's true, he's a human being, all right?
He says, let's say it's true. He's a human being. Okay, obviously. I mean, talk about tautology. Of course he's a human being. Nobody's denying that. The film doesn't deny him being a human being. You know, he seems to say, well, everybody has their dark skeletons in the closet like TB Joshua. First of all, no, he don't. I mean, the litany of things he's being accused of, which again, we'll probably do a live about that shortly here. Him being human being is not an excuse or a justification for the things that was done, right? He is supposed to be a man of God, right? Supposed to be a Christian pastor. Now there are qualifications for a pastor. You know, your life, how you conduct your life, things like this are qualifications for an elder. To which you violate them, you're disqualified from the pastoral office. The things that he's being accused of and demonstrated, he quite clearly was disqualified to be an elder among God's sheep. That's even before we get to the doctrinal issues. Just the practical characteristics of TB Joshua's lifestyle disqualifies him from being an elder. And I would say demonstrated he was not a Christian. Now, I know a lot of people will be upset with that, but let's continue with more of this reasoning. Oh, he's just a man.
All human beings. The church is God using human beings. It's not God using gods. No, we are human beings.
You don't have to be a god to live a decent, upright life, right? All you have to do is be a Christian, right? You know, and so I just find this very dismissal of the allegations. It's desensitive to or insensitive to the allegations. To the victims, right? The people who like, oh, he personally did this to me. Again, we'll look at some of those claims when I do a live, but he just dismisses it. And I guess TB Joshua says, you know, the over 30 people who contributed to this documentary in the film per se, they're just lying. You know, maybe they're working with the 666, right? Which is a textual variant, but I don't want to get too technical, right? And so, you know, he just dismisses it all. It's like, hey, you know, I guess he goes with the premise that if it's true, well, he's just a man, right? And then we all know all men, you know, have over hundreds of sexual allegations against them. It's like, well, actually, no, not every man does, right? So very interesting, which kind of makes me ask the question, if this is your reasoning for him being just a man and excusing this, what are you doing behind closed doors? Should the BBC look into your life and see if you have all these allegations made against you? And that's what I thought when I first heard this. He's just a man. Not that big of a deal. You know, it's not God using gods. He's just using men. Okay, we need to look into your life, sir. What are you doing, right?
We can make mistakes. We can have errors.
Look, I'm sorry for pausing it so much, but I hate when people call sin mistakes and errors. Me making a mistake or an error is me knocking over the vase accidentally. You know, mistake and error, that presupposes, oh, it's accident. You didn't really mean to do it. It's just a mistake. You know, you weren't intentional. No, sir, the things he's been accused of and some of these things demonstrated quite clearly, it's not a mistake and error. It is rebellion. It is high treason against a holy God. See, we need to have a biblical view of sin. Nowhere in the Bible is sin actually called mistake. Just an error. No. See, when we view sin as evil, a violation of God's character. Oh, now we're getting to some biblical, accusations of proper biblical thinking. See, we need to think biblically about these things, not just mistakes, not just errors, not just boo-boos, right? Sin is evil.
We may do things because of flesh, but whether he did it, which I believe he did not do it, it's simply an attack to the body of Christ.
No, sir. If he did do it, it's not an attack on the body of Christ. See, he's like, well, if he did do it or didn't, it doesn't matter, right? To him, he doesn't really care if he actually did do it. Because notice his reasoning is still the same. It's an attack on the body of Christ. No, it isn't. First of all, judgment should begin in the household of the Lord. So this should have been dealt with. If men of God actually held to what the Bible said and not the dreams and visions of TB Joshua, this would have been dealt with long ago before hundreds of lives were taken. Or, you know, we'll get to that live when we talk about that. But many people, we will be in this situation is what I'm saying. So the world had to deal with it, unfortunately enough. It's not an attack on the church. The church, you know what's an attack on the church? The fact that people didn't deal with it. Not that the BBC called it out. And so, again, faulty reasoning again. And I think, now, again, like as I said, I think there are some things in the film that maybe did not happen or they're speculation at best. They can't be demonstrated. But they provide multiple witnesses with no connection to each other. I mean, no background affiliation. And it was interesting. I mean, leaders in the movement, not just people who went to the, you know, TB Joshua's event maybe once or twice a month, you know, people who were working for him. Now that actually presents a higher case of probability when it's people, and not just one or two. My goodness, you know, two would be enough, right? You know, establish the fact on 2 or 3 witnesses, but I mean, over 30 people making the same accusations that correlate with one another. These people aren't in the same room with the other giving their spiel. So you have to actually, you know, examine that evidence and those witness statements and things like that. Along with some of the clips they played. Again, we'll get into that.
So I want everybody to open your eyes and understand this. Church, don't smile over this foolishness. Why would BBC?
Well, let me address that. I am not smiling over this. I actually think what happened was sad. It is a terrible thing that TB Joshua went so long unaddressed until he died. People started saying something. I think that's a sad thing. Now that's what that's what usually happens with cults. Some people say, well, why address it when he died? He's going to bring that up. Why address it when he died? Well, generally because they fear the cult leader. You know, there are characteristics that cult leaders, and they instill fear in the people to where they make certain, you know, stipulations to where if you address them, you'll be removed, you'll be shunned. And there's a lot of fear that goes on. And so when the person is dead, now they feel liberated finally to talk about it. Now, some don't. Some will never talk about it because they still have that fear ingrained in them. We'll get into that on that live.
About this foolishness, why would BBC leave everything happening in London to come attack a prophet who is dead?
So we dealt with the issue of a dead, but he's like, why would the BBC, who's in London, right? They're affiliated in London. They have their grounds in London. Why address him? TB Joshua is going to go on and say who's in Nigeria, Africa, right? Well, one, that's because TB Joshua was international. He didn't just have popularity in Africa, but around the world. And it's national news. So he's mad that someone outside of Africa dealt with this story as if that's actually relevant. Like, would he have cared if it was an African film production? No, he would have been making the same arguments. He just wouldn't have made that one. So it's actually irrelevant. This is called a red herring. It's actually irrelevant to the issue at hand. You're just, you know, someone's, you know, you get in a debate with someone on the Jesus being God, and they say, hey, look, you have a sign that says all things theology in your background. Okay, that's irrelevant to the issue at hand. So is this statement.
From Africa. BBC is for British people. They should broadcast British stuff. They are broadcasting a prophet.
They pretty much, you need to stay in your country. Right. Well, this is silly. Every country presents national news. That's stuff that's not just happening in America, but nationally. Right. If a famous person would die, overseas, guess what? American news will talk about it. That's just the issue at hand, right? He had popularity that extended beyond Africa. Therefore, BBC talks about it. I mean, there's people who are from the UK in the film because they moved there to be a part of this ministry. So I thought that was interesting. It's just pretty much stay in your own country. This is the shut up and dribble prophet version, right?
He's not even alive. Who died years ago. Why?
2 years ago.
The devil is after you guys. So make sure you think right. You worship God. You serve God. You love God. And above everything, fear God and love Jesus. Enjoy life every day.
Nothing says believe me like getting in my nice Mercedes Benz as I drive off to do whatever it is he does. I actually want to look at some content from Passion Java. I was actually meaning to get to it pretty quick. Then this film came out and I was like, hey, it redirected my attention to other things. And so we will get to that shortly. But what are your thoughts about the TB Joshua documentary? What are your thoughts about Passion Java? Hope you guys enjoy this video. Till the next time, grace and peace. Yo, grace and peace. Thank you for watching another episode of All Things Theology. If you enjoyed what you heard today, go on and give me a like. Subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell. I promise to give you weekly lives, videos, interactions, exposing false teachers, sharing with you, the viewer, my theological beliefs, things about the culture, and the Bible. So if you're here for that, come on and join us. Also, if you would like to support this channel financially, you can do so by becoming a Patreon member or a YouTube member. Links are in the description below. You can see content before it drops. You can also have Q&A sessions with also other Patreon members, YouTube members as well. So if you would like that, hit the description link in below.